So let's talk about muscle as a predictor for longevity. In 2019, they did a study. The Journal of Gerontology showed that muscle strength and mass were stronger predictors of mortality than cholesterol or BMI. This is doubling down on the study I mentioned earlier, right? That's just 2 studies now. Other research backs this up. The Lancet Public Health in 2018 found that low muscle strength was associated with a 2-fold higher risk for premature death.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
What if you could lower inflammation, heal your gut, and feel incredible in just 6 weeks? Our Repair, Clear, and Thrive Challenge kicks off October 1st and will help you do just that. You're going to get the complete Repair and Clear protocol that we use to detox and restore people's gut, the CoreSync app with customized coaching to keep you accountable, a heart rate monitor for real-time tracking, as well as a full wellness and biometric screen so you can see the results. That's over $1,600 in value. Register by September 1st and you'll also get a free functional medicine consultation with me to personalize your plan. Now, spots are limited and registration closes September 20th. One dedicated winner will walk away with $2,500 worth of prizes. You have nothing to lose, except maybe some pounds, inflammation, gut dysfunction, but you've got a whole lot to win. Go to alessifunctionalhealth.com/challenge to join the challenge. And remember, your health is in your hands. Welcome back to another episode of Health Decoded. I'm your host, Dr. Alessi. So excited to have you here with me today and excited to get into this episode's topic. This topic kind of spurred from last week's show. I was interviewed on a podcast with Dr. Swathi for the Myos MD Power Panel and just had a really good conversation. It was more of an interview, really. She was asking me a bunch of questions about, how we're helping people in our clinic and kind of the way functional medicine works and, the difference between functional medicine and conventional medicine. But we touched on the concept of muscle as medicine, right? How muscle is really an organ for longevity. And so it made me start thinking about, man, this is something we should dig into a little bit more because this is such a heavy topic that we discuss with our patients. First and foremost, anytime we're trying to, enhance health and enhance longevity and, mitigate the risk for injury, chronic disease, illness, all of that, muscle is foundational. And so, really the title of this episode, Muscle as the Fountain of Youth, is really true. So, let's get into this. Most people have been told, worry about your cholesterol or your blood pressure, manage your weight. But the truth is, muscle is really the single most underprescribed medicine that we have. It's the foundation of your metabolism, your hormones, your immune system, and thus your longevity. So realistically, if you want to live longer and better, this episode is for you. So we're going to break it down, or I'm going to break it down into really the 4 segments that we often go through. Number 1, like, what is muscle? Why is it important? Number 2, how to prevent muscle loss or like the absence of muscle. Segment number 3, how do we test for it, or I guess keep ahead of it? And then number 4 is always like what to do about it or how to take action. So that's always the one that people love. So let's get right into it and start with why muscle matters. So your muscles aren't just there to move weight around, right? They're not just there for you to look buff and look good. Your muscles are actually an endocrine organ. That means they release powerful chemical messengers called myokines that influence nearly every system in your body. Myokines regulate inflammation, they improve insulin sensitivity, they stimulate fat metabolism, and they even cross the blood-brain barrier to support cognition. There was an awesome review out of the Nature Reviews of Endocrinology in 2018 that put it plainly: skeletal muscle is now recognized as an endocrine organ with profound effects on metabolic health. So, basically muscle is an excellent predictor of lifespan. the kicker is the more muscle you carry, the longer you live. This is just shown time and time again, not only in research, but just look at the people who are living vibrantly for a long time, right? And so the Journal of American Geriatric Society, 2014, so about 10 years ago now, showed that low muscle mass, or what's being called sarcopenia, was independently associated with increased mortality in older adults, even after adjusting for BMI and fat mass. So muscle alone, not just overall body weight, not BMI, muscle alone was independently associated with increased mortality if that muscle was low. They also found that grip strength, which is a simple marker for muscle function, was more predictive of all-cause mortality than blood pressure was, right? Yet here we are harping on blood pressure all the time. Oh, my blood pressure's high. Oh, the doc told me my blood pressure's high. I need to be on this drug. I'm not going to rabbit hole here. You guys already know my stance on this, but how many people are on drugs for high blood pressure but haven't even been addressed for other indicators of, disease and chronic illness or life longevity things, right? They just harp on this one single marker and then just put people on drugs. And it's actually a pretty, it's a lazy way to do medicine, honestly. So, I hope this helps to kind of like help you rethink or think outside the box a little bit about how to approach that. And so muscle tells us more about how long you're going to live than blood pressure, cholesterol, or even the scale is going to tell us. But the flip side of this is that after age about 30, most people are going to start to lose about 3 to 8% of their muscle mass per decade. These are averages, right? So once you hit your 50s, 60s, that accelerates dramatically unless you're working against this, right? And so the process is called sarcopenia. And I think the definition, they even say like the natural loss of muscle over time with age. There's nothing natural about that. We just stop moving and we just stop utilizing it. And so it is going to decline, but we can prevent that, right? And so sarcopenia is directly tied to things like falls, people being more frail, which is, actually the number one cause of injury-related death in adults over 65. They have a fall, and then the downslope of that, they don't often come back from. It's related to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, like 100% correlation. Low muscle mass or sarcopenia is related to an increased risk of dementia because of that loss of the myokine signaling to the brain, as well as immune dysfunction and higher chronic disease burden. There was a study in the journal Aging Cell 2020 that found loss of muscle mass and mitochondrial function in skeletal muscle was directly linked to increased rates of dementia and cardiovascular disease. So, if you don't die of aging, right? We don't die from aging. We die from losing muscle mass because that's our armor that protects us, that protects our brain, our metabolism, our hormones, and ultimately that independence or that autonomy that we want to have. And so the earlier you start protecting it, the better your chances of living not just longer, but stronger. So let's get into, what we call the hidden crisis of muscle loss, or that unattended crisis. But before we go deeper, let's take a quick moment to thank our sponsor for today's episode. This episode of Health Decoded is brought to you by Authentic Nutrition, the brand redefining what it means to fuel your body the right way. At Authentic Nutrition, they believe that what you put into your body matters. That's why every single product is crafted with clean, premium ingredients and dosed with maximum efficacy to ensure you're not just meeting your health goals, you're exceeding them. No fillers, no shortcuts, no gimmicks. Whether it's their advanced supplements for energy, recovery, or gut health, you can trust that what's on the label is exactly what's in the bottle. Authentic Nutrition delivers science-backed formulations that work as hard as you do. If you're tired of products that promise the world but don't deliver, it's time to make the switch to Authentic Nutrition. Elevate your health with transparency, quality, and results you can feel. Check them out today at AuthenticNutrition.com and use promo code Alessi15 to get 15% off. That's THENTIC Nutrition.com, promo code ALESSI15 to save 15% and take the first step toward real, lasting health. Authentic Nutrition. fuel your best self. Now back to the episode. All right, welcome back. So let's get into this. Let's talk about the crisis that almost nobody is talking about, which is muscle loss. Conventional medicine barely pays attention to it. And kind of what I alluded to earlier, there's no drug for it. So there's not a code they can bill the insurance and get paid. And so they tend to not care about it. That's just the truth. But as we've already discussed, muscle is life. If you have muscle on your body, you live longer and better and more vibrant. So let's talk about muscle as a predictor for longevity. In 2019, they did a study. The Journal of Gerontology showed that muscle strength and mass were stronger predictors of mortality than cholesterol or BMI. This is doubling down on the study I mentioned earlier, right? That's just 2 studies now. Other research backs this up. The Lancet Public Health in 2018 found that low muscle strength was associated with a 2-fold higher risk for premature death. And then the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle in 2021 confirmed that muscle mass and function are critical survival markers, especially in people with chronic illness. Your muscle has immune modulators in it. So it secretes these things, the myokines, the cytokines that help your immune system function better. You're less likely to get sick or have some kind of negative response to more of a common cold or something like that. And so the other thing is your muscle and metabolism work together as well. They're directly related. Over 80% of glucose disposal happens in your muscle tissue. Your muscles are like sponges for blood sugar. So if you don't have muscle, your body can't handle carbs. Weak muscles then equal weak metabolism. And this explains why, we see so many people who come to us with weight gain, fatigue. They're on that verge of prediabetes or full-blown diabetes and these blood sugar swings. And it's not just diet issues. It's not just willpower. They have muscle issues at the root of it. And so supporting muscle and muscle gain is almost like 100% across the board in all of our protocols that we use with our patients, because again, it is longevity. And so, sarcopenia, let's talk a little bit more about that and kind of some statistics, because by the time you hit 60, they've shown that as many as 1 in 3 adults already have sarcopenia. And this is clinically significant muscle loss. Again, they generalize this as normal. This is not normal. This is not a normal part of aging. Common, yes. Normal, no. And so most don't even know until it shows up as like a fall or a fracture from bumping a corner, right? How many times have you heard that, right? Somebody just, man, I just hit my arm on something and I actually had a hairline fracture. It's because the bones, the strength of your bones is actually directly related to the strength of your muscles as well. So when the muscle, which is attached to a tendon that's attached to the bone, when the muscle is put resistance on and has to strengthen, it's pulling the bone as well, which then makes the bone need to strengthen as well. And so Wolff's Law tells us that bone is going to grow based on the imposed demand. And so if we're not putting any type of resistance or demand on the bone, we're not going to have that healthy bone growth. And so the problem is conventional healthcare rarely tests for muscle health. They probably don't even know how to test for it, honestly. They'll send you to specialist. They're going to look at cholesterol, blood pressure, maybe even body composition, but those are not ideal predictors. And so if you're only getting the blood pressure, cholesterol checks, maybe some glucose checks, you're not getting the whole picture, and you're missing a huge part of a longevity piece that is, paramount to living a long and healthy life and preventing things like diabetes, dementia, and being disabled. And so let's talk about that, right? Let's get into how do we test for muscle loss then? So, because we've talked about why is muscle important, what is it, and why is muscle loss dangerous, but how do we actually measure it so that now we can talk about taking action? Because your doctor's not checking it. Raise your hand if you've ever had a muscle test, right? To see what amount of muscle mass you have on your body. Most people have not. And so the gold standard is what's called a DEXA scan. This is dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, right? And so what this does is it gives you a total picture of your body, lean muscle mass, fat mass, bone density, fluid, all of it. So you have an idea of where your percentages are. There are things like in-body scans or what's called a BIE, a bioelectrical impedance. This test is more accessible, a little less specific, but is a quick way to track lean mass versus fat mass. The caveat is you have to do that test in the same conditions every time. Like you wouldn't test that one day in the morning on an empty stomach, the next day after you worked out and had some carbs in you. Like it would be an unfair test, right? It wouldn't be helpful at that point. So it has to be the same conditions, but it can be a pretty general screen. And then some simple tools is also doing like tape measure circumference, checking body fat with like a caliper test. And then, strength is obviously a big one. So strength testing, the gold standard on this front is what they do is a grip strength test. So it's basically a thing you squeeze and it can tell how much pressure you're putting out just from your forearm strength. And so it's one of the best predictors of longevity, actually. A weak handshake equals a weak prognosis, right? And then in older adults, the chair stand test. So being able to to stand from sitting, can you do that repeatedly without using your hands to prop you up or without, faltering? These are great signals for performance and muscle strength. And then gait speed, right? How fast can somebody walk is a great predictor as well. And so the Lancet in 2015 concluded that grip strength was a stronger predictor of all-cause mortality than systolic blood pressure was. So that goes to show you. And then obviously something that we are very much a proponent of is things like blood work and biomarkers. When we're looking at muscle health, we don't just stop with these strength tests. We also want to dive into some labs that give us the full metabolic picture. Because remember, your muscle is directly related to your metabolism. And so if the metabolism is slow, is not performing well, that's a good indicator that perhaps the person has not enough muscle on their body. So checking things like fasting insulin, glucose, hemoglobin A1C, we take it a step further and we test for this marker called HOMA-IR. That's a early marker of insulin resistance. It can basically help us predict if someone's going to become diabetic or pre-diabetic before they have the full-blown markers like on these ones. And so we've actually just in the last couple of weeks seen a few patients with that where they started having those feelings, those symptoms maybe of fatigue and not feeling so good, weight gain, stubborn weight gain. And then we did a blood test, and on a standard test, the insulin, the glucose, the A1C, all would have been within normal range, like on the higher end, but within normal. But the HOMA test was in off the charts red. And so it was like, okay, your body is starting to tap into becoming insulin resistant. It's just a matter of time now before you become diabetic. And so now we're ahead of the game. We proactively caught that, and we're able to help these patients prevent the onset of diabetes in the future. It's pretty awesome. Other things are like creatinine and the kidney filtration rate, the EGFR, because muscle mass impacts kidney markers as well. Low creatinine can actually be a red flag for muscle loss. And then obviously always checking hormones and inflammatory markers. We want to see how testosterone, DHEA, even like growth hormone and IGF-1, which are all crucial for muscle building and retention. Again, the concept here is proactive medicine. We're able to test these things to get ahead of what could potentially be muscle loss in the future. There was a study in the journal Nutrients 2021. It reported that low testosterone and vitamin D deficiency were independently linked to sarcopenia and poor muscle function. So that just goes to show you. And, the concept with blood work is not just getting a snapshot of one thing, like we talked about, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your sugar. We need a full picture, right? I need to know the whole story behind what's going on with the patient. And that's how we know whether they're on the path of growth and resilience or if they're on the path of decline. And so now we know a little bit more about like what that looks like, right? And how to test for it, why it's important. Let's talk action now. My favorite part of the episode is always how do we fight back against muscle loss, right? Some common and then some more cutting edge tools and ways. So let's land this plane, right? Let's talk about the most important piece. How do you actually fight back against muscle loss and reclaim your longevity? Because the truth is, it's not like the muscle just disappears, right? It atrophies when you stop using it and challenging it, and when you stop fueling it. And so the good news is you can rebuild muscle at any age. If anyone told you like, oh, you're too old to build muscle, they lied. They were wrong. Go get a different opinion from somebody who knows more. And so the foundation, right? The non-negotiables. Number one, you know where I'm going with this. Strength training is non-negotiable, 2 to 3 times per week. If you're going to be 2 to 3 times per week, it needs to be full body training, right? Obviously, progressively overloading, right? It's not about lifting heavy right off the gate and possibly hurting yourself, because then what's the point? But, starting with what you can manage and then building and building. And as you progressively overload, your body responds to that and adapts and gets stronger, builds more muscle. And so for people who are untrained, a little sidebar here, the first month or so, if you've never really engaged in resistance training, the first month to 2 months, you're not going to see huge gains, because most of the gains at this point are going to be neurological, your brain and your muscles learning how to talk together, right? Then usually after that is where people see the most incremental gains in the next couple months, because they've stuck to it. The systems are now working together. We have that harmony, and we're going to start building some muscle. The next thing is doing like zone 2 cardio, so moderate intensity to improve the mitochondria, the fat metabolism, the burning. Protein. Love talking protein, because protein is, it's the only thing that's going to help with that muscle synthesis. Without it, everything else you're doing isn't going to make sense. And so we like to aim for 1 gram per pound of body weight, spread across the day. Obviously, you don't want to do like a 200-gram protein shake in the morning and then not the rest of the day. Although with, by nature that, or by data that actually works, but that's going to be tough to do consistently. So, spreading it out to optimize for protein synthesis. I read a really cool study the other day that was showing that if you consume about 30 to 40 grams of protein before bed, you are going to maintain that muscle protein synthesis and that anabolism throughout the night for about 7 to 8 hours. So that's where like the old bodybuilder trend was, like chug a protein shake before bed. Sometimes these guys even wake up in the middle of the night and drink more protein, but there's validity to it, right? The bodybuilders and the meatheads always tend to be onto the right track, even before it's proven scientifically. And then let's talk some key nutrients, right? And some really more like high level stuff. But creatine, I believe everybody across the board should be taking creatine. My kids are 4 and we've got them on creatine already, because it's going to help them build muscle, build bone, strengthen their brain. There's cognitive benefits from it as well. Now, the dosage they take is not the dosage I take. Obviously, I hope you know that, before you leave me a bunch of comments saying I'm crazy. They're taking 0.25 grams, maybe 0.5 gram. I take about 10 to 15, maybe 20 grams a day. And so more on training days or recovery days even. And so creatine is hands down the most researched, shown to be safe. Everybody should be taking some dose of creatine, even if it's just 5 grams a day. Essential amino acids are very important, especially for older adults who maybe have some resistance to that anabolic kind of muscle growth, right? Or they're trying to jumpstart that again, and it's been some time. Essential amino acids can fill in the gaps where protein isn't, because they are what make up protein. And so they're going to help with that muscle building, protein synthesis. And then things like vitamin D3 paired with K2, omega-3s, and magnesium. These help to reduce inflammation, improve muscle and metabolic function as well. And so the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition 2020, check this out. High protein diets and resistance training reversed sarcopenia in just 12 weeks. Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing how many times you see something like this and it's like, wow, that is something simple, natural, and something that we just should be doing, actually reversed something that they're medicating heavily for, right? They're putting people on medications for osteoporosis when there's literature showing that strength training 2 to 3 days a week actually improved osteoporosis more than the medication itself. And so I think before you jump on a medicine, before you jump into high risk things or things that are, not as natural, try the natural stuff first. Give your body the chance to do what it's meant to do. That needs just a little bit of support, right? And again, it's all about taking action. Now, on the more like emerging and fringe type therapies, some stuff that I like, is the cool stuff, right? These are the sexy topics, but some things that we engage in the clinic as well. Things like emerging and advanced therapies like peptides. Love talking peptides, using peptides. Actually planning on having my friend Jay Campbell coming back on the show soon. So look out for that one. He is the peptide guy. So And go back and listen to the old episode we did with him where we talked about peptides, hormone replacement. Really cool episode. And so peptides are small signaling molecules, but they have powerful effects within the body because they can target specific systems and processes and actually enhance them. And so a couple that are great for metabolism and muscle building are things like epitalon, which slows down cellular aging and protects muscle. MOTS-C, MOTS-C boosts mitochondrial biogenesis and fat metabolism. And then there's things like bioregulators. These are gene targeting peptides they basically signal specific tissues to regenerate. And so they're cutting edge. These are longevity tools that have been used in Eastern European medicine for decades. And of course, here in the US, we're the last ones to start listening and hearing, right? And thinking outside the box. And then a really awesome intervention is something called Myos MD. The clinical ingredient is fortitropin, derived from fertilized egg yolk. It actually helps to basically turn off the switch that your body has that limits the ability to build muscle. It's really awesome, the technology they have in this product. Check it out. Actually, you can go over to myosmd.com and look more into it. This is what we just discussed on the last episode on the power panel. And if you're interested in purchasing, use code Alessi-GA. You'll get 10% off and, be able to get a better value for that. And then other things that we have in our clinics too is things like red light therapy, that photobiomodulation, which enhances mitochondrial energy, speeds up muscle recovery, reduces inflammation. We have the power plates, which is high frequency vibration. So that puts a stimulus into the muscles to basically turn on kind of the way the muscles in the brain talk to each other, gets blood flow and circulation, drains lymphatics. Fantastic. And so there was a really cool study in the Frontiers of Aging Neuroscience 2020 found that red light therapy improved cognitive and muscle function by directly stimulating mitochondria. And if you don't know what mitochondria is, go back a few episodes, probably 10, 12 episodes back. We discussed what the mitochondria is, how to enhance it, and why it's important. These are the powerhouses, the powerhouses of our body. So they produce the energy and they clean up the energy as well. And so, at Alessi Functional Health, we're not just throwing protein shakes at you. We're not just telling you lift more weights. We're going to assess, right? We're going to do some strength tests, muscle mass tests. We may have you get a DEXA scan, look into hormones, nutrient levels, inflammation, mitochondria, all of these things to get the broad picture, and then ultimately build a personalized plan, which probably will include some advanced supplementation, maybe peptides, lifestyle protocols, and some adjustments to your physical activity. And our total care program isn't about quick fixes. So, if people come in, and that's what they want is I just want to fix this quick. Usually that's maybe not a good fit. And maybe, medicine or something is more their speed. But if you want that lifestyle change and actually make a change that's going to last and impact your longevity, our total care program might just be for you. The final takeaway here, if muscle is medicine, then it will protect you from diabetes, dementia, frailty, premature death, because you can't out medicate muscle loss. That's not gonna be the end. You have to build muscle, right? And so the best part is that science shows it's never too late. So if you really want the fountain of youth, it's not a pill, it's in your muscles. You got to take action, step one. And so if you'd like to learn more about how we help people to diagnose, reverse, heal chronic disease within our functional medicine programs like Total Care, go to alessifunctionalhealth.com, schedule a consultation with me or one of our other providers, and let's chat about creating a personalized plan for lifelong health. Listeners of this show, you're always going to get exclusive discounts and price reductions. So on products, lab tests, even your first visit. So make sure you mention where you heard about us. And as always, if you found value in this, please subscribe, hit that follow button, and share this. Please share this with somebody who needs to hear it or somebody who would else be interested. That's how we grow. That's how we change more lives. If you want to get in touch with us, maybe be featured on an episode, ask your question, or share your story, just email us questions at ask@alessifxhealth.com. And then, you can visit alessifxhealth.com, sign up for our newsletter, which will keep you informed about our resources, cutting edge technology, and new things that are happening every single week. So thank you again for tuning in to Health Decoded. I'm Dr. Alessi, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources and personalized support, visit us at alessifunctionalhealth.com and sign up for our newsletter. To hear your questions answered live on the show, send them to ask@alessifxhealth.com. That's ask@alessifxhealth.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.